Well, good morning, everybody. To get us started today, I want to show you GOES 16 full disk image because it is December 21st, making it the winter solstice in the northern hemisphere and the summer solstice in the southern hemisphere. What's kind of neat about this is if I draw a line following the day-night line here this morning as the sun was rising, and then draw another arrow that kind of matches about the position of the equator, I can then draw a third arrow that starts where these two intersect and have it point directly at the sun, which is way off the screen here, of course. What's neat about this is that this angle you see here is 23.5 degrees, and that matches the axial tilt of Earth. Now, in the northern hemisphere, the number of daylight hours will be increasing from now till June 21st. In the southern hemisphere, which they just began summer officially, we'll start to see a decrease in that. The sun has not been up on the North Pole for 3 months. They still have another 3 months to go. But when you look at this picture overall, just something else to remember that's neat about Earth and its orbit. We're actually very close to the sun this time of year compared to the middle of summer. The reason why the temperatures are colder in the northern hemisphere during this time of year is simply because of the axial tilt, even though we're actually considerably closer to the sun in our kind of eccentric orbit around the sun. But certainly today, it's going to feel like winter is, the official start to winter is going to be coming in with quite a big push because right here, if I can get that oriented for you, is a pretty powerful storm system that's coming out of the plains, and along its leading edge we're going to be seeing some very strong winds. So let's go take a look at those winds. Here's midday wind speed, and right in through there is the leading edge of this Arctic blast we've been talking about advancing toward the south and toward the east throughout the end of this week. So this is its position today. By Thursday night it'll be here. So it's moving at speeds approximately 30 to 40 miles an hour, but the winds behind it are going to be gusting in that 30 to 60 mile an hour range. You can see the extent of that cold air will make it clear into the Gulf of Mexico. This will be actually important how far to the south this cold air makes it when watching a weather system next week that might show up right here along the Gulf Coast. But we do expect this front to clear through the eastern Corn Belt, through the mid-south, approaching the southeast by tomorrow night. And behind it, we are expecting a flash freeze event. We're expecting possibly blizzard conditions in this area. And we're going to give you some updated snowfall totals in just a few moments. But during this entire time, much of the west will be relatively mild. It's just going to be on the eastern side of the Rockies where this cold air mass is going to really affect the rest of the country. Now, I'm curious about one thing possibly happening today, and I'm going to, after this video, go read some of the local forecast discussions from the National Weather Service out of parts of the western plains here. In today's report, I did mention that parts of western Kansas, when you look over the last 12 months and compare it to data going back to 1895, it is actually the third driest 12-month time period, so December of last year through November of this year, on record in this area. That's western Kansas. And what I'm very concerned about is as those winds come out of the north into this area, which they're going to be advancing quickly today, I wonder if we will get a synoptic scale dust storm out of this, borne on brutally cold air in this area, because the surface soil moisture here is still extremely, extremely low. Now, as we watch this, I'm going to pull up the high-res NAM just to kind of give you an idea on the timing. We're going to pick this up at 9 o'clock this morning. So this, again, is temperature, and you can see the little wind barbs in there as well, telling you wind speed and direction. So through this evening, this is through 8 o'clock tonight Central Time, the front is advancing over that region, so we're going to watch it carefully for the potential for a synoptic dust storm borne on very cold air. By tomorrow morning, the front stretches from the UP through Wisconsin, right here along the border of Illinois and Iowa, and all the way down through Missouri, into Oklahoma and Texas. So there will be along this front a 30 to maybe 40 degree change in temperature. And then in the hours that follow that front, we may see temperatures drop as much as 50 degrees. So let's park it out here. Thursday, 6 p.m., the front advances. And I'll be honest, this is considerably faster than was earlier predicted this week. That front on 6 p.m. On Monday and Tuesday's model runs was just at this point clearing through Illinois, so it's advanced much quicker. And then as we just play through the night on Thursday and get out here to early Friday morning, we'll just stop this right at the end of the run, noon on Friday. That cold air will have advanced all the way to the mid-Atlantic, the Carolinas, cut into the Gulf of Mexico. We will just be watching the end of this week through the weekend, some very, very cold air sit in this area. The National Weather Service has increased the aerial coverage of its wind chill warnings to now go all the way from Montana, North Dakota, clear to South Dakota, South Dakota's here, clear to Texas into the mid-south. They've now increased an area of winter storm warning through here, and we're starting to see the first blizzard warnings show up in the Midwest in parts of Minnesota. One of the most difficult things about this system has been to match the timing of the system with when we expected the low to deepen. It was originally predicted to kind of deepen somewhere over Indiana. That's shifted a bit farther to the north and east and then into Michigan. And that's going to change the snowfall forecasts for a lot of this area. And I'll show you those new updates in just a few moments. But this is a system that's impacting 35 states right now. So it's a very high impact system. Let's pick up with a high-res NAM just to watch the timing of the precipitation type and intensity. So we're playing through today a lot of snow on the leading edge of that front, spreading into parts of the upper Midwest, but back here into the plains in Wyoming. And then as we go forward, some scattered showers out ahead of this in parts of the Carolinas. Could get some mix in here of some ice, maybe some sleet, a little bit of snow. So be prepared for that. But the main front is advancing by tonight, and we're going to watch that front push very quickly as a upper level low out ahead of this moves through the Carolinas. This was something that some of the earlier model runs did pick up on. The early week runs this week, though, did not see it quite as well, but now we have a better idea on when and where that precipitation is going to come through this area here in the Carolinas. So as the front advances here, this is 7 a.m. on Tuesday morning Central Time. It then sweeps through Wisconsin, Illinois, Missouri, back down here into parts of Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. Very rapid changeover from rain to snow. And what's important about the new position of this low is that all the way through now 11 p.m. on Thursday, where we had earlier in the week anticipated a low coming on the tail end of that shortwave trough here to develop, it's no longer in the forecast. And now that low will be a bit farther to the north as it develops, and this system's going to try to occlude over Lake Huron and into Ontario versus where I thought it would earlier in the week, which is over Michigan. So this is dramatically decreasing for a lot of us the snowfall forecasts that we had kind of shown earlier in this week, just based on the speed of this front. Meanwhile, in parts of New England, very heavy rains with snow on the northern side of it as the warm sector opens up. But of course, this cold air will advance through. I've left this here at midnight or 12 a.m. on Friday morning. Now, while a lot of our attention is going to be on how rapidly this system deepens, and we do expect this low to bottom out somewhere around 970 millibars, that'll be contrasted with a 1050 to maybe 1060 high. That's why we're going to see such incredibly strong winds in this area. Wind speeds here, as we saw earlier, may be gusting 30 to 60 miles an hour for about a 48 to 60 hour time period. It's important to note that that front is clearing through New England on Friday, and behind it quite a bit of lake effect snow is expected. And this is not to ignore the next big system that's coming in here into the Pacific Northwest. So if you don't mind just for a moment, take a look over here. This is Thursday evening, getting into the overnight hours on Friday into Friday morning. And that's already the beginning of the next system we're going to have to be watching. And this whole pattern is going to continue to stay quite active as we go forward. Now, I just wanted to focus in for a moment on what we do now expect through parts of the Midwest. And you'll notice that snowfall totals here are going to be generally in that 2 to 4, maybe 5 inch range, heaviest throughout the Great Lakes, but a pretty significant reduction in what was seen yesterday in the models over Michigan, as we've now seen just a better idea on the speed of this system. The snow that's coming out here, this will be the beginning of a new system entering the plains and Midwest next week. I'll show you that in a few seconds. But the activity in the west and also in the East Coast is going to be quite high with this upcoming pattern. Before I show you all that, though, I just want to get a quick idea on these temperatures. So let's look at minimum temperatures through the next 7 days. So here's this morning's min temperatures, and as we play through, that's Thursday morning. And going into Friday, this is probably our largest extent of cold air stretching from the Canadian prairie, this cold, all the way down to the Gulf Coast. It then spreads east, but we'll get some moderation in the temperatures. I mean, it's still brutally cold for Saturday morning. And this gets us into Christmas morning here. What you notice that most of the west during this time, due to some gentle ridging and some modified Pacific air, stays mild compared to normal. There is one exception, and that is what is sneaking through parts of the Columbia Basin here. And we do expect very cold temperatures in this area. So it's kind of coming on some northeast wind into this area. But let's get to the end of this. By Sunday into Monday next week, we're going to watch a pretty significant transition beginning next Tuesday, Wednesday, as much more mild air is introduced to the country on some stronger jet stream winds across the Pacific. But I do need to show you where this is all coming and going, okay? So let's get into the European model solution. We've already seen through Friday midday, so we're going to park it right there. So a couple things to watch here. The next system comes into parts of the Northwest. It then pushes a weaker shortwave out on Saturday right into this area, such that by Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, and evening, that wave moves out of Montana, possibly brings some snow into parts of Alberta and Saskatchewan, but possibly a few inches, 5-6 inches into parts of North Dakota. And that moves right into the Midwest. So you see that system curling up there. Now, while that's occurring, the first system we've been talking about moves out of Ontario into Quebec. We're going to see some lake effect snow on the backside of this. And if you remember, I told you that we needed to watch what was coming out of the Gulf of Mexico. By next Tuesday morning, kind of born on that contrast between the cold air that's coming down now and the warmer water, we could see a Gulf low that shows up here and possibly spread some rain over parts of the southeast. But beyond this, into week 2, the activity in the west is really going to start to pick up here in a big way. And that's largely because of what we've been talking about this week and seeing that the models have been consistent with extending the Pacific jet to resist big ridges over Alaska, big ridges over Greenland, and just keep its momentum straight through the Gulf of Alaska, entering the United States. That is a pattern that increases the chances of precipitation. I apologize. Looks like I have a slide out of order here. I did want to show you before I go on that there is chances for some significant snowpack building up in New England with this next system going through. So I did want to kind of hover over here for a moment. But if I can come back to that bigger picture, there we go. This is what we're currently seeing in terms of the week 2 precipitation anomalies. And finally, the European has picked up on the signal the GFS has had for a while. You extend the Pacific jet like it is, plowing it into the Pacific Northwest and California, it will produce routine systems that'll draw on Gulf moisture. What's important about this particular setup is what the temperatures will do, because while we're dealing with the Arctic air this week, when that strong Pacific flow comes in, we will see more mild temperatures as we finish 2022 and start 2023. It does not mean it's going to be warm. It's the very beginning of winter here, but we will see a lack of high amplitude troughs and ridges, which means the pattern's going to be a bit warmer. We've seen this being consistently forecast in the models. Lastly, just to bring you up to speed on South America, this is a forecast of precipitation type and intensity going through the end of this week toward Friday. That's where I want to park it, right in Friday. The models are trying to produce a front that comes through very dry parts of Argentina that produce some widely scattered storms in this area. And that front advances toward the north on Saturday. And then into Sunday, we're going to see it kind of break up over Paraguay, Uruguay, and southern Brazil. As we then work our way into early next week, we do see overall drier conditions for Argentina, but to the north here, we're expecting heavy rains. So the models have kind of looked at this in terms of the ensemble average, keeping it wet from Mato Grosso east. We've now seen kind of a decrease in the forecast for how dry this was going to be. So in other words, it's a bit wetter. But overall, without sustained rains coming through Argentina, the scattered showers and storms that are going to move through are still a bit less than average as we finish spring and start summer in this part of the world. So there's going to continue to be some drought stress in parts of central Argentina, maybe better rains over toward Buenos Aires. So that's it. We're going to watch this carefully, and I'll give you another update tomorrow morning. Appreciate your attention today. Thanks.